Nonchalance, in its truest and most powerful form, is not a symptom of detachment or carelessness, but a cultivated expression of inner composure and strength. It is often misunderstood in modern culture, where emotional detachment is frequently glamorized as a form of toughness or superiority. However, real nonchalance is not the product of apathy or emotional deadening. It is the outward manifestation of emotional regulation, self-mastery, and an unshakable internal core. This distinction is crucial because many people who seek to appear nonchalant simply suppress their emotions, disconnect from their feelings, or pretend not to care as a form of defense. True nonchalance is something far deeper and more mature. It comes from within, not as a mask to hide vulnerability, but as an evolved state of being in which one's sense of self is so secure that external chaos no longer has the power to rattle it. At its core, nonchalance is a psychological and emotional posture of relaxed alertness. It means remaining calm under pressure, choosing not to react impulsively to provocation, and resisting the urge to explain oneself constantly or seek validation. People who embody this kind of calm don't do so because they are indifferent. They do it because they have trained their minds to remain sovereign even in the face of judgment, rejection, praise, or insult. They are not cold or distant, they are grounded and deliberate. When someone operates from this state, they are far less likely to be manipulated by external stimuli, emotional bait, or societal pressure. Their behavior becomes internally motivated rather than reactive, which is a sign of psychological freedom. Nonchalance is often misunderstood as emotional coldness because it doesn't always involve overt displays of concern or enthusiasm. But the lack of visible reaction does not imply a lack of feeling. Rather, it is the refusal to be owned by fleeting emotions or superficial provocations. Consider a person who remains calm in an argument, not because they don't care about the outcome, but because they understand that reacting with anger would only escalate the conflict or diminish their power. Their composure is a choice, not a default state. It is the result of discipline, emotional intelligence, and self-awareness. This controlled strength allows them to see the situation clearly, respond with intention, and maintain their dignity. In social dynamics, this form of nonchalance creates a gravitational pull. It exudes quiet confidence and self-respect. People who embody it don't chase, beg, or demand attention. They don't over-explain or overshare. They speak when necessary, act when appropriate, and leave when their presence is no longer valued. They are not trying to impress anyone because they understand that self-worth does not require external confirmation. This quality can be incredibly attractive, not in a manipulative or performative way, but in a way that naturally commands respect. It signals that one has emotional boundaries and a clear sense of value, which in turn encourages others to treat them accordingly. Nonchalance also serves as a protective mechanism in a world full of emotional volatility and performative outrage. The ability to remain composed amidst a storm of opinions, misinformation, or emotional turbulence is not a denial of reality, but a mastery over one's response to it. It's not about not caring what people think. It's about not allowing those opinions to destabilize your inner world. This level of self-possession allows a person to move through life with clarity and purpose, unencumbered by the constant need for reassurance or conformity. When you are truly nonchalant, you are not numb to life. You are simply no longer controlled by every emotional wave that passes through it. Whereas apathy is a kind of emotional paralysis, a refusal to engage or care at all, nonchalance is engagement on your own terms. It is care without attachment, attention without obsession, and presence without neediness. A person operating from this space still values relationships, success, and personal growth. They simply do not cling to outcomes or derive their identity from them. They understand that everything in life is temporary and that grasping too tightly only leads to suffering. By maintaining this relaxed vigilance, they remain open to experience without being enslaved by it. They are not emotionally dead, but emotionally sovereign, capable of experiencing life deeply while maintaining a strong inner anchor. This is not detachment out of fear or avoidance, but equanimity cultivated through self-reflection and psychological maturity. There is an undeniable allure and strength in those who do not reveal everything about themselves. In a world where oversharing has become normalized and instant access to people's thoughts, feelings, and lives is just a click away, those who remain silent, reserved, or intentionally mysterious hold a kind of quiet power that is both rare and compelling. Silence and mystery aren't signs of weakness or shyness, but rather refined tools of psychological strength. They create space, command attention, and evoke curiosity. More importantly, they shift the power dynamic in any interaction by keeping control of what is known, what is perceived, and what is left to the imagination. In silence, there is room for interpretation. In mystery, there is an aura of intrigue that often makes people lean in rather than turn away. Silence is often feared because it strips away the noise we use to fill space and control perception. But to be comfortable in silence, especially in a social world that constantly demands expression, is to show that you are not desperate to be understood, validated, or affirmed by others. When someone speaks less, they reveal less. And when they reveal less, they retain more power over how they are perceived. This control over perception is a quiet form of dominance. It doesn't rely on aggression or manipulation, but on self-containment. A person who speaks only when necessary, who doesn't rush to fill every gap in conversation or justify every action, exudes a sense of authority and composure. Their words carry more weight precisely because they are not always available. Mystery, on the other hand, is the deliberate withholding of personal narrative. It doesn't mean being deceptive or hiding inauthentic truths. Rather, it's the art of keeping parts of yourself sacred, private, and intentionally shielded from casual consumption. In mystery, there is an unspoken boundary that others cannot easily cross. This boundary is powerful because it forces others to wonder, to imagine, and to respect the limits you set on your exposure. When you are mysterious, you create a psychological gap. People begin to fill in the blanks with their own projections, often assigning more depth, intrigue, or value to you than if you had laid everything bare. This is not about manipulation. It's about understanding human psychology. What is elusive is often more desirable than what is readily available. Together, silence and mystery form a potent combination that reverses the typical dynamics of social power. Most people believe that being louder, more visible, or constantly active gives them influence, but true power often lies in stillness. Stillness is not stagnation. It is conscious restraint. It is the ability to hold back, observe, and act only when necessary. The person who moves in silence is often the one who is most dangerous, not because they are hiding ill intent, but because no one can predict their next step. They are not broadcasting their plans, emotions, or insecurities to the world, which gives them strategic advantage. In contrast, those who constantly speak, explain, defend, or perform tend to lose influence over time because they have made themselves too accessible, too legible, and too easy to categorize. There is also a spiritual dimension to silence and mystery. Those who cultivate these qualities often do so because they have developed a deep inner world. They do not need external validation because their sense of self comes from within. Their silence is not emptiness. It is full of intention, of discernment, of wisdom. They are not compelled to tell their story to everyone because they know their story does not need an audience to be real. This kind of inner security is rare, and it speaks louder than any boastful declaration or emotional outburst ever could. In every social context, whether it's leadership, romance, negotiation, or personal boundaries, the person who can remain silent, who can leave questions unanswered and emotions unspoken, who can carry themselves with a sense of presence without desperation, holds the most gravitational pull. Their mystery becomes their magnetism, their silence becomes their statement, and their restraint becomes their reach. Nonchalance, when truly understood and applied, is not about being careless, indifferent, or emotionally numb. It is a calculated and strategic posture, an emotional and psychological disguise that allows individuals to maintain control over their actions, their image, and the dynamics of power around them. In its most powerful form, nonchalance is a performance of detachment, a way to signal that one is not emotionally destabilized by the opinions, reactions, or provocations of others. This calm exterior functions as both a shield and a sword. It protects one's vulnerability while subtly disarming others who are looking for emotional cues to exploit or manipulate. When a person appears unfazed, when they do not react with visible emotion to praise or criticism, victory or defeat, it creates a sense of mystery and invincibility that is difficult to penetrate. In personal relationships, social hierarchies, and even business or political dealings, emotions are data. People observe each other carefully to determine where emotional leverage might exist. Displays of insecurity, overexcitement, jealousy, or fear signal where someone can be pushed, where they can be controlled, or how they might be manipulated. Nonchalance is a refusal to give others this data. It is a refusal to let anyone know where your emotional weak points lie. When you maintain an air of relaxed indifference, especially in high-stakes situations, you shift the psychological balance in your favor. The other person begins to question their assumptions. They can no longer be sure how much something matters to you, whether you're affected at all, or what your next move might be. That ambiguity becomes a source of power. Nonchalance, in this way, is not laziness or passivity. It is the art of emotional camouflage. A person who uses nonchalance strategically is deeply aware of their own feelings, desires, and vulnerabilities. They are simply disciplined enough not to wear those feelings on their sleeve. It is not that they don't care, it's that they don't show how much they care, at least not until it's advantageous to do so. This emotional restraint confers a level of control that is rare in a culture that often rewards oversharing, dramatization, and impulsive reaction. By appearing cool and collected even under pressure, the nonchalant individual communicates strength, confidence, and unpredictability, all of which serve to elevate their social capital. There is also a psychological sophistication behind this posture. Nonchalance is often misunderstood as a lack of investment or interest, but in reality, it's a highly engaged mental state. It requires one to constantly monitor internal reactions, suppress impulsive emotional responses, and maintain an outward calm. This isn't about being emotionally deadened, it's about being emotionally sovereign. A nonchalant individual does not let circumstances dictate their behavior or disrupt their mental equilibrium. Instead, they become the eye of the storm, a still, centered force in the midst of chaos. Others are drawn to that kind of presence, not just because it's rare, but because it signals leadership, control, and depth. When others lose their composure, the nonchalant person remains grounded, gaining an edge simply by not reacting. This strategic disguise is particularly effective in competitive environments where perception is reality. Whether in negotiations, rivalries, romantic pursuits, or professional confrontations, those who show too much eagerness often lose leverage. Enthusiasm can be endearing in some settings, but in high-stakes games of influence, it can be a liability. When you appear too eager, you communicate neediness or desperation, and people instinctively devalue what is easily obtained. By contrast, the person who plays it cool, who does not appear pressed or emotionally reactive, becomes more desirable, more respected, and more enigmatic. Their silence creates questions, their indifference creates interest. Their lack of visible desire often generates more desire from others. What makes nonchalance so powerful as a disguise is that it allows one to observe rather than be observed, to influence without appearing to try. In many cases, the nonchalant person is deeply invested, but their calm facade allows them to operate under the radar. They are like the poker player who holds a winning hand but doesn't let a flicker of expression betray them. They allow others to underestimate them, to misread them, and in doing so, they gain the upper hand. The appearance of not caring becomes a strategic cover for their deeper intent. It becomes a mask that hides the inner workings of their mind, keeping their real motivations and emotional investments safely out of reach. Emotional mastery is one of the most underrated yet influential forces behind genuine power and respect. It goes far beyond simply keeping a straight face or suppressing outward signs of emotion. It is the conscious and consistent ability to understand, regulate, and utilize one's emotions to navigate the complexities of human interaction with precision and poise. People are constantly watching how others react to adversity, provocation, and success. They take cues from the way someone carries themselves when situations become tense, when setbacks occur, or when egos are bruised. In these moments, emotional mastery reveals itself. The person who can remain composed, focused, and dignified while others are spiraling gains and unspoken authority. That kind of emotional control doesn't merely suggest inner strength. It demands respect from anyone observing. In every setting, whether personal or professional, emotional instability creates friction. People who are reactive, impulsive, or easily thrown off course by criticism or praise are seen as unpredictable. Their lack of emotional control not only weakens their decisions, but makes others uncomfortable. Emotional mastery, on the other hand, provides a kind of stability that people instinctively respect and gravitate toward. When you display the ability to stay grounded during emotional storms, you become someone others look to for leadership, reassurance, and guidance. You demonstrate that your actions are not governed by fleeting moods or triggered impulses, but by deliberate and thoughtful intention. This self-regulation translates to credibility. The more you can master yourself, the more others are likely to trust and follow you. One of the key reasons emotional mastery commands respect is that it signals discipline. Discipline is universally admired because it suggests strength, resilience, and self-awareness. A person who can remain respectful during an argument, who can delay gratification for a greater purpose, or who can face betrayal or loss without descending into emotional chaos, is showcasing an inner power that does not rely on words to be understood. That silent strength becomes a force that others are compelled to acknowledge. Emotional mastery reflects a high level of consciousness, one that has evolved beyond the immediate reaction and instead sees the bigger picture. It is the awareness that emotions are powerful forces, but ones that must be directed, not allowed to run wild. Another reason why emotional mastery elicits respect is because it reflects a deep understanding of human nature. People who have mastered their own emotions tend to understand the emotions of others better. They do not react to surface-level provocations because they can often see the insecurity or fear driving another person's behavior. They don't need to retaliate or prove themselves through emotional outbursts because their validation comes from within. This level of emotional intelligence allows them to remain unshaken in the face of manipulation, drama, or social politics. It gives them the ability to de-escalate conflict, to turn hostile situations into constructive ones, and to make others feel seen and heard without compromising their own boundaries. Such a person becomes a natural leader, not because they demand it, but because their emotional maturity earns it. People respect those who have done the inner work. Emotional mastery is not something that happens overnight. It is developed through repeated challenges, introspection, and conscious effort. It requires confronting one's own fears, insecurities, and impulsive tendencies and learning to redirect them rather than being controlled by them. This journey, although often invisible to the outside world, is what produces the quiet authority that others can sense. When someone walks into a room and remains unfazed by the social temperature, when they can speak with clarity even when others are overwhelmed by emotion, they radiate control. Not control over others, but control over self, and that is a much rarer and more powerful kind of control. In emotionally charged situations, most people look for someone who can anchor the room, the one who doesn't yell when tension rises, the one who listens instead of interrupting, the one whose words are measured, whose facial expressions are neutral, whose body language exudes calm. That person becomes the natural center of gravity. Their ability to keep their emotions in check allows others to feel safer, more stable, and more willing to cooperate. Emotional mastery in this sense becomes a form of social influence. It is not loud or aggressive, but it carries weight. It shifts dynamics, recalibrates conversations, and fosters respect not by force, but through presence alone. Even in intimate relationships, emotional mastery plays a central role. A partner who can remain composed during disagreement, who doesn't weaponize emotions, who doesn't emotionally collapse under pressure, becomes deeply attractive. Their consistency creates trust. Their restraint creates security. They are not perfect or robotic, but they are trustworthy with emotion, which is one of the most valuable traits in a close connection. This capacity for emotional regulation allows for healthier communication, deeper empathy, and mutual respect that strengthens bonds over time. In every form of relationship, the person who has mastery over their emotional world becomes a pillar, steady, grounded, and worthy of admiration. True power does not operate on panic, haste, or desperation. It moves with deliberation, confidence, and control. Urgency, on the other hand, is the language of fear. It is the reaction of someone who feels they are losing control, who believes time is slipping away, and who acts not from strength, but from anxiety. When a person is constantly rushing, constantly reacting, constantly trying to get ahead before others catch up, they are not wielding power. They are being ruled by pressure. They are no longer making decisions from a place of clarity or purpose, but from a frantic need to survive or maintain an illusion of dominance. In contrast, power expresses itself in composure. It waits. It chooses. It doesn't let the ticking clock or external expectations dictate its movements. It operates on its own timeline, signaling to the world that it is in command of the moment. Urgency gives away your internal state. The moment someone sees you rushing, they understand that you are under stress. They can sense that you're emotionally invested, perhaps even desperate. And desperation is the quickest way to lose leverage in any negotiation, relationship, or power dynamic. Whether in business, in social hierarchies, or in personal matters, the individual who displays urgency is immediately at a disadvantage. Others know they can push harder, demand more, or withhold what you want, because they recognize you're more afraid of not getting it than they are of losing you. That's a precarious place to be. True power means not showing your emotional need, even when the stakes are high. It means creating the impression that you could walk away at any time, that you are choosing to engage, not scrambling for a lifeline. Urgency clouds judgment. In a rush to resolve things quickly, you skip over essential details, overlook warning signs, and make emotionally driven decisions that can have long-term consequences. When you're in a hurry to get the deal done, to make the sale, to secure the relationship, or to prove your worth, you're more likely to settle for less than you deserve or agree to terms that compromise your values. Powerful people understand that waiting often brings more advantages than rushing. The delay allows more information to surface. It tests the commitment of others. It reveals true intentions. Urgency skips this process. It tries to control the outcome prematurely, which often leads to weak positions and regret. Deliberation, on the other hand, is the weapon of the powerful. They understand the difference between movement and momentum, and they know when to pause, when to let others sweat, and when to act with precision. Urgency is also a sign of being reactive rather than proactive. Power doesn't chase. It doesn't get dragged into chaos or pulled into someone else's timeline. It creates its own pace and expects others to align. When you feel pressured to respond immediately, to always be on, to answer every call or message the second it arrives, you're allowing yourself to be controlled by external forces. That's not power. That's subservience disguised as efficiency. There is an illusion in modern society that speed equates to competence, that if you're not moving fast, you're falling behind. But real influence and impact are rarely built in haste. They are built through consistency, discipline, and patience. Every time you act out of urgency, you are giving away your energy to something or someone else. You are reacting, not leading, and that distinction makes all the difference when it comes to long-term authority and respect. The emotionally centered individual does not act simply because there is pressure to do so. They understand that urgency often originates from fear of missing out, fear of being replaced, fear of failure. These fears create internal alarms that drive hasty decisions, but those who have done the work to master themselves can acknowledge those fears without obeying them. They can sit with the discomfort of not knowing, not acting, not controlling, and still feel grounded. That is power. It is the power to wait, the power to say no, the power to resist the pull of the frantic world and remain centered in one's own intention. When you refuse to be rushed, you signal that you are not dependent on external approval or external timing. You show that you trust your own rhythm more than the noise around you. That is deeply unsettling to those who cannot do the same, and therefore deeply commanding. There is also a psychological effect at play when urgency is absent. When someone does not rush, they create a vacuum of curiosity and anticipation. Others begin to wonder why you're not hurrying, why you're so calm, why you're not reacting like everyone else. This mystery gives you more control. You're no longer broadcasting your needs and insecurities. You're becoming a mirror, reflecting others' urgency back to them while you remain untouched. This quiet confidence builds influence without effort. It forces others to accommodate your pace instead of the other way around. This reversal of power dynamics is subtle, but profound. The less you show urgency, the more others perceive you as someone who knows something they don't. Someone who has options, leverage, and depth. Power and patience are intrinsically connected. Every empire, every successful leader, every lasting influence has been built on the ability to withstand discomfort and delay gratification. Urgency is short-term energy. It might get you somewhere quickly, but it rarely gets you where you truly want to go. Power is about sustainability, foresight, and restraint. It doesn't crumble under pressure. It absorbs it, studies it, and uses it when the time is right. In every high-stakes situation, the one who can wait usually wins. The one who can withhold their need to act immediately holds all the cards, because while urgency screams, power whispers, and it is the quiet, measured movements that ultimately shape the outcome. True confidence doesn't announce itself loudly. It doesn't need to dominate conversations, seek applause, or crave constant reassurance. Instead, it moves with a calm, grounded energy that speaks volumes without uttering many words. Quiet confidence is rooted in self-assurance, a deep internal sense of worth that isn't dependent on external validation. It allows someone to be present without demanding attention. The truly confident person doesn't need to prove anything to anyone because they are already secure in who they are, what they stand for, and what they're capable of. This is the kind of confidence that makes others feel something powerful even when nothing is being said. It draws people in because it is so rare and so compelling in a world dominated by noise. When confidence is real, it doesn't require performance. Loudness is often a mask for insecurity, a way of trying to convince others of strength that hasn't yet been fully internalized. People who boast excessively, who dominate every interaction, who seek constant recognition, are often compensating for something fragile within. They are projecting an image they desperately want others to believe because they have not yet convinced themselves. In contrast, quiet confidence is built on experience, resilience, and self-knowledge. It emerges from challenges that were faced and overcome, not flaunted. It is shaped in silence, not on stages. You can recognize it in the way a person carries themselves, their posture, their eye contact, their ability to listen without feeling the need to interrupt or outshine. These subtle cues communicate something much more trustworthy than any loud proclamation ever could. True confidence does not compete. It doesn't feel the need to tear others down in order to feel elevated. When someone is genuinely confident, they are comfortable celebrating others' success, offering support, and stepping back when necessary. They know their value doesn't diminish just because someone else shines. They don't operate from a scarcity mindset where praise is limited and must be hoarded. Instead, they understand that real strength is collaborative, not combative. This makes them naturally magnetic. People want to be around them not because they are the loudest in the room, but because they radiate calm, safety, and stability. There is an ease about them that allows others to relax and be themselves, which is one of the highest signs of social intelligence and emotional mastery. Another hallmark of quiet confidence is the ability to admit fault or say "I don't know" without feeling threatened. People who lack true confidence often pretend to have all the answers, even when they don't. They fear vulnerability because they think it exposes weakness. But someone who is truly confident understands that strength comes from honesty and authenticity. They don't feel lesser for acknowledging their limitations. On the contrary, their willingness to be real adds to their credibility. It shows that they are more committed to truth than to ego. This makes them better leaders, better friends, and better partners. They don't need to be right all the time because they are secure enough to learn, to grow, and to evolve. Quiet confidence also allows for presence. When you're not constantly worried about how you're being perceived, you can be fully engaged in the moment. You're not mentally rehearsing your next statement or strategizing how to dominate the interaction. You're listening, observing, and responding with clarity. This kind of attentiveness is rare and powerful. It gives you the ability to read the room, to sense emotional undercurrents, and to respond thoughtfully rather than impulsively. It gives you an edge not through aggression, but through awareness. You become the kind of person others trust, not just because of what you say, but because of how you say it and the calm certainty behind your words. The quiet confidence is also deeply resilient, because it's not propped up by approval or applause. It doesn't fall apart when things go wrong or when criticism arrives. People who rely on external validation are easily destabilized by setbacks. Their confidence shatters when they are not recognized, when their ideas are rejected, or when they face adversity. But those with inner confidence remain steady. They may feel the sting of failure, but they do not collapse. They adjust, they adapt, and they keep going. Their belief in themselves is not shaken by temporary disappointments because it is not built on flimsy foundations. It is rooted in something deeper, something earned, not given. In today's culture, where self-promotion is often mistaken for self-worth, quiet confidence can be misunderstood. It might be seen as aloofness or lack of ambition. But those who truly understand power recognize that the loudest voice is rarely the strongest. It is often the one who speaks least but says the most, who moves with purpose but not urgency, who leads with presence rather than performance, that holds the greatest influence. They don't need to advertise their importance because their energy, their consistency, and their results speak for them. True confidence is not in the noise, it's in the quiet conviction that you are enough, that you are capable, and that you do not need to chase validation to prove your worth to anyone. Discipline is the invisible architecture behind every powerful presence. It is the daily devotion to internal order that reflects outwardly as calm, clarity, and command. When someone has trained themselves to act with discipline, mentally, emotionally, physically, the result is a kind of quiet intensity that others feel immediately. They carry themselves with intention. Their words are chosen with precision. Their actions are consistent, reliable, and rooted in self-control. This kind of person does not need to assert dominance through force or noise. Their very being radiates strength because they have mastered the art of directing their own impulses, controlling their reactions, and focusing their energy. This mastery is not gifted. It is earned through countless unseen choices, the decision to get up early, to stick to their commitments, to stay composed when anger tempts them, and to maintain standards even when no one is watching. A disciplined person is not swayed by fleeting moods or shifting opinions. They are grounded. They know who they are and what they are about. This inner structure gives them a steady presence that doesn't crack under pressure or dissolve into chaos when things don't go as planned. Most people live reactively, responding to life like a leaf in the wind, but the disciplined individual has built themselves into a kind of mountain, immovable, focused, and unwavering. They don't just try to be consistent, they are consistent. It's not a mask or a performance. It's who they are because they've repeatedly chosen the hard path, the structured path, the path that doesn't rely on motivation or comfort to dictate their behavior. That internal alignment produces a presence that commands respect without demanding it. One of the most powerful aspects of discipline is how it eliminates internal chaos. People often carry around fragmented energies, unfinished tasks, emotional clutter, overthinking, guilt from procrastination. This noise weakens their focus and scatters their presence. But someone who lives with discipline clears this clutter daily. They finish what they start. They keep their word to themselves. They don't wait for perfect conditions or rely on willpower alone. They operate from principle. And in doing so, they cultivate a mind that is quiet and a body that is ready. This kind of order breeds confidence, not the performative, loud kind of confidence that rises and falls with attention, but the deep, unshakable kind that comes from knowing you are in control of yourself. That certainty is rare, and people feel it. It creates a gravitational pull that makes others take notice, not because you are trying to be noticed, but because you are embodying what most people long for: command over oneself. Discipline also breeds clarity. In a world that's flooded with distractions, impulses, and noise, most people are confused and scattered. They chase dopamine hits, jump from goal to goal, and never develop the mental stamina to sit with discomfort or focus, long enough to build anything of substance. The disciplined person, however, knows how to delay gratification, how to say no when it matters, how to keep showing up even when the emotions of the moment beg them to quit. That sharpness of focus cuts through the fog. It allows them to see what matters, to act on it without hesitation, and to stay the course long after others have fallen off. That steadiness builds trust, not just from others, but within themselves. They know they can rely on their own word, and that internal trust radiates outward as authority and composure. There is also a kind of quiet power in the way discipline simplifies life. It eliminates the drama that comes from inconsistency and emotional reactivity. The disciplined person doesn't make decisions based on mood. They don't abandon their goals when things get hard. They don't allow their lower impulses to dictate their day. This simplicity of action creates an aura of calm. Others might be frantically reacting to problems, losing their temper, or falling apart under pressure, but the disciplined person remains focused, not because they are cold or robotic, but because they've trained themselves to act from intention rather than impulse. This calm in the storm gives them a commanding presence, the kind that makes others turn to them in times of chaos because they seem to know what to do and how to stay composed. Discipline also feeds resilience. When setbacks come, as they always do, the disciplined person does not spiral into despair. They adjust, they reorient, they continue, because their habits are not tied to perfection, but to persistence. They understand that growth is not about never falling, but about always getting back up and continuing forward. This unbreakable momentum builds presence in the same way a great tree's roots make it immovable. No matter the storm, it stays, it endures, and in that endurance there is something profoundly powerful. You can feel it in how they enter a room, how they respond to challenges, how they move through conflict. It is not arrogance, it is not performance, it is earned self-possession, the kind that can only come from a life shaped by consistent discipline. In every room, the most disciplined person often has the quietest voice, but the strongest presence. Others may posture, interrupt, or try to dominate with volume or force, but the one who has trained themselves to listen, to observe, and to speak with purpose often holds the most power. This is because presence is not just about what is said or how one looks. It's about the energy you bring. It's about how settled you are within yourself, how aligned your actions are with your values, and how reliably you live those values day after day. That kind of integrity is magnetic. It draws people in, not because you are chasing them, but because they instinctively sense that you are someone who is not easily moved, someone who has built themselves with care, and someone whose presence is the byproduct of deep and disciplined living.